Hello and welcome, dear ones, to the Amy Ahlers Show. I'm your host, of course, you guessed it, Amy Ahlers, and this right here is episode 211. You can find today's show notes as well as links to Kris's new amazing, fantastic book at amyahlershow.com/211. So today we're going to be talking about something that I just think is so deeply important for us to talk about in life. And that's from going from heartbreak to wholeness. And with this particular topic, this is actually the name of my dear friend, Kristine Carlson's brand new book, From Heartbreak to Wholeness, which you can check out at fromheartbreaktowholeness.com. And this is her brand new book that's all about really stepping into your own hero's journey. Before we dive into that conversation, I just want to talk to you a little bit about who this amazing, fantastic woman is. Kristine Carlson, she's the New York Times bestselling author and world-renowned speaker. She is passionate about spreading her message of joy and gratitude amidst the ups and downs of life. She's been a personal dear friend to me for years. We've been in mastermind groups together over the years. She helped me walk from the world of not published author to published author. She is an absolute ray of sunshine that also has an incredible fierceness about her, which I love. I always like to say, don't F with the sunshine, because if you do, you will get burned. And that's what I love about Kris, is that she lives this, she's like a beacon of joy and happiness in her life. And it's not because everything's always gone her way, which we're going to talk about here on today's show. So with that, and without further ado, Kris, thank you so much, darling, for being here on the Amy Ahlers.
Oh, Amy, I love you. And I'm so happy to be on your show. And you're just the best show host ever. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. Did you hear that, people? Share the show. Share the show. No. Right? Oh, you're so sweet.
Talk about a ray of sunshine. You are the ray of sunshine. My sunshine pales compared to your sunshine.
I don't think so. We're little sunshine sisters over here. And I feel like people often have that thing when they see people that are really positive. You and I both live in that state of positivity as often as we can. But then they think, oh, that's because that person's never been touched by things like heartbreak or loss or tragedy. And I'd love for you to start by sharing a little bit of your story, because I know that's such a big part of what inspired you to write this incredible book.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so most of you probably are most familiar with mine and my late husband, Dr. Richard Carlson's work in the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff book series.
Yes.
That was a series that Richard started over 20 years ago. And on the 10th anniversary of that book, he was on a business trip launching a new book and had a pulmonary embolism on the flight that was going into New York, which was really, it was sudden death for him. And at that point, over 10 years ago, 11 years ago, our family was just, humming along like every other family does. It was Christmas time. The kids were in high school, going through their final exams before Christmas break. It just was a life-shattering phone call that I received, and life-shattering news to our family. And so many people can relate to loss and can relate to loss of all kinds. And certainly we have so many different kinds of heartbreak. And it isn't just the same loss that I went through. There's
Right.
the loss of your home, or there's the loss that you go through in divorce, or there's the empty nest. Many people go through tremendous grief as their nest empties because of the loss of identity that you go through when your life shatters, and when something ends.
Yeah.
It always puts us in that feeling of the unknown and uncharted territory, and brings up just a lot of fear for most people.
Well,
and for me too.
Yeah, right? I mean, I feel like there's some school of thought, and I feel like I even bought into this for a little while. I don't know about you, Kris, you'll have to tell me, but where it was like, if I just kept my vibration up, if I just did everything right, that I would never have any suffering, that there wouldn't be loss in my life, right? That everything would just be amazing. I would manifest all the magic in the world, right? And then it was like, as I've matured, as I've grown, as I've had my own life experiences of incredible loss, you start to understand that loss is actually a part of life, that it's unavoidable.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would have bought into that whole category until I had my great loss as well. Just
Yeah,
it's easy to hum along thinking that you have control over life.
right.
When in
Wouldn't
fact,
that be convenient?
yeah. And I mean, sometimes it seems like we do,
Yeah,
sometimes it seems like things happen and we've made them happen. And yet, certainly loss does show us that there's a lot of surrendering that has to happen in life, and that we really don't have that much control, and that control is merely an illusion, like a lot of life is. And yet, you're right about that, that as you grow up, as you mature, you realize that your losses have served you very well. And especially when you're on the other side, you can't tell somebody that who's going through a tremendous heartbreaking experience when they're in the early stages of it. You can't say, because it just sounds so trite, but it's
right.
true. It's true that on the other side of that loss is healing. And on the other side is a much brighter future. And moreover, because you've actually transcended the darkness, you've actually gone into the valley, and you come out, and the sunlight is all that much brighter when you come out of it. And again, I will reiterate that you can't really tell somebody that who's in the valley. They don't believe you, because it
Right.
can be so awful. And I guess I wrote this book, Amy, From Heartbreak to Wholeness, The Hero's Journey to Joy, not to get people out of the valley, but to give them a lot of hope that even in the valley, they can make empowering choices. They can step on a healing journey, and they can really get the maximum amount of growth out of this experience. Because, man, I always said, geez, if I have to go through this kind of suffering,
Yeah.
boy, there better be like a really kick-ass weight loss clinic or something, like there better be some really good benefit to
Yeah.
it, because it just sucks along the
Yeah.
way. It's like
Yeah.
doing those 90-minute workouts that you're just sweating and you're hurting, and you're like, I don't want to do this, but you want what's on the other side. And loss is kind of like that. Grief is kind of like that. It can't really put your body to the test. It puts your mind to the test, puts all your emotional tools to the test, for sure. So I think that I really hope to soften the blow for people going through heartache and heartbreak of all kinds by really showing them that there is a path to healing, that they can step on this path, and they will feel better as I'm holding their hand.
I remember you saying something to me. This was a long time ago. I don't even know if you remember saying it to me. It might be something you say often, or it might not be. But I remember you saying to me, I feel like there's two roads when you experience a tragic loss in your life, whether it's divorce, like you said, or your kids growing up and flying the coop, or the death of someone that you love, that there's two responses. One is that people grow from it and really expand into this new version of themselves. And the other is that they collapse and they never recover from it.
Yeah.
Is that, can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that, and how, because I know that there's going to be people listening right now that are in a tragic loss,
Yeah.
and how can we help them? And I know this is exactly what your book is about. It's like helping them get to the latter instead of the former, or the former instead of the latter, being one of those people that really expands into growth, versus we all know people who, where they suffer a loss and then they are beside themselves and they never embody themselves again.
It's so true. Well, and that really points to the subtitle of my book, The Hero's Journey to Joy. That I really, after looking back, after 10 years of healing, I've really understood that there's some really, really important pivots that a person makes
Mm.
in their decision to heal, and how they will heal. And I will say that we don't, like we were talking about, we don't have any control over what happens, but we do have control over is how we step into our healing and how we decide to work with what happens in our lives. And when you say that, I remember saying that to you, and it isn't something I've said a lot, but it's something I've said. And it's what I've noticed is that when you can choose not to be a victim of your circumstances, and that means that you realize that you have a deep belief inside that you're not living at the affect of life. But, that said, we get dealt some pretty difficult circumstances, but still, you're not a victim of those circumstances. It's just that life happens to all of us. Things happen. We get in car accidents, we have loss that happens, we get hurt, we get news of our health. It happens to all of us. And we don't get to choose that happens, but we do get to choose how we respond to life and how we step up in our own game. And, I watched my really closest friend go through breast cancer the year before I wrote this book. And, there were 5 of us that got callbacks within a few months of each other. And she was the 1 out of 5 that had breast cancer. And it was stage 3 and moving into stage 4 breast cancer. So immediately it was about, removing her breasts. Immediately it was about going into treatment. And yet I just watched with such admiration, because right away she started asking the questions that showed me that she was choosing the hero's journey. And she asked, why has this shown up for me? Not poor pitiful me that this is here. Why has this shown up for me? What can I learn from this? What am I to gain for the rest of my life by this experience? And these are the questions the hero asks. These are the questions the hero, doesn't hurt any less, doesn't suffer any less, but the hero steps up their game and says, gee, this sucks, like it sucks for me, like it does for anybody, but what am I going to gain from this? How am I going to change and awaken to a greater life because this happened? And, I watched her go through a really horrible year of treatment, and, and every time, she just chose the hero's path. And, and then, and the same thing that can happen to a person, when they lose their loved one too. You cannot change the fact that somebody dies. It's an irrevocable, I can't even say the word. It's
irrevocable.
Yeah, there you go. If you can't change it, it's an impossibility to go backwards on that one. And so all you can really do is step forwards, and you just move forward. And that means you embrace grief, you don't fight it, you open up to it. You allow your suffering to really open up your new life. And it means that you have to be courageous and feel it. Means you have to be courageous and not numb out to it. But I really talk about in my book, From Heartbreak to Wholeness, about really, it's almost like a mission you're on, a reconnaissance mission of reclaiming your own life and reclaiming who you are now after this huge change and transition. There's a lot of rediscovery in the book about, how do you rediscover yourself? A lot of times we find ourselves, even for people who haven't gone through a loss, but you see couples, for example, who've been married for, 25, 30 years, their kids have left the nest, and suddenly they're looking at each other and they're like, who are you? And do I even like you? And they could use this book, From Heartbreak to Wholeness, too. because they have to go on the same mission in their marriage. They have to rediscover something about their marriage that they really love, and who are they now without these children in the home? Who are they now with this new identity crisis? And so this book really points to the fact that for a lot of reasons we go through an identity crisis, and the crisis is what sets us on the journey. And mostly I really want people to tell their hero's story and get them to choose the hero's path. And I don't shame anyone for feeling a victim, because believe me, I think we all feel the victim back and forth. Even when we choose the hero's path, we're not always the hero.
Right.
don't wake up and you have a car accident or something and say, oh, gee, I'm so happy that happened.
Right. Exactly. Well, and it's like that expression, and I talk about this a lot on the show, that if it was happening for you instead of to you, and that mindset of not that the world's out to get you, not that you're the victim to it, but like, okay, if I were to just say, well, if this was happening for me, how would that shift my perspective? How could I then empower myself around it? What are the growth edges that are going to show up for me? And I think that, like you said, you also have to open up to the grief. You have to open up to feeling the feelings that are associated with all of it versus pushing them away and resisting them.
I love what Joseph Campbell, he's on this very famous interview, and he says, they ask him about suffering, and he says, yeah, suffering, it's not a fun experience, but when you're suffering, you're really like, by God, you're alive, and that's really the part that suffering made me feel too. I mean, I didn't realize that I was kind of humming along and not really caring too much, that I wasn't living a very passion-filled life, but I didn't even know it. I was like, I didn't even know. Here I was supposed to be this super conscious person, and I didn't even know that I wasn't feeling passion. And then somebody, it was Rich Dutra, he asked me, he's like, what's your passion these days, Kris? And I looked at him, I'm like, what do you mean passion? I'm like, what do you mean passion?
Like, I'm just trying to get my daughters through school. Leave me alone.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't know. I don't find committee meetings like my passion, but I do a lot of them. But it was like a passion, and then after, Richard died, just like a few months later, I was just so awake, and I was like, I suddenly felt so much life, and I had realized I had built up all these barriers in my heart, even, that my heart had been completely broken open. And, I always say, like, the sad thing for me now is that I'm actually a really great match for Richard now. I mean, I'm even a better match for him now. He's smiling. I'm sure he is, like, laughing, but I mean, I'm a much more close match to his energetic pattern now than I was even when he was alive. I always felt like I was kind of like trying to keep up with him, like, he was very evolved, very masterful, had great, just really beautiful integrated energy. And, I had a lot of growing to do, clearly, because I did it.
Yeah.
Easy though, but I did it. I chose to definitely step on the growth path.
Yeah. So there's a couple things I want to highlight there. One is you've been talking a bit about the hero's journey, and I would love for you to go into that a little bit more, of what you mean by that, and how in your book that you walk people through so that they can step on that hero's path and really have this be an expansive thing where they go into wholeness versus going into just heartbreak city and never recovering.
Well, that's a great question. And I really didn't know much about Joseph Campbell's work when I stepped on my own hero's path. But over the years, and just my, my experience in the personal growth world, I've, of course, come across much of his work. And I started to realize that this archetypal, mythical storyline and journey is really within our DNA, but we do have to make a couple of very strong choices in order to get on the path. And not everybody's going to choose the hero's path if they don't know that it is a personal choice. It's like a lot of people don't even know, Amy, that happiness is a choice.
Right.
That's the new research that actually shows that even Sean Achor says that even amidst grief and amidst adversity, you can choose to be happy.
Yeah.
But if you don't know that you have that choice, you can never step on. And the hero's journey is a powerful mythological, story that is really part of all of our story. That you have this crisis event, and it completely shatters your world. And here you are, you're in an identity crisis, you're at a crisis point, and you have to choose, like, how am I going to do my life now? We all have to make some kind of choice. And the hero is going to step onto that arc, and they're going to embrace what comes their way on this journey, but they're going to tell the story from what we call the hero's lens, from the hero's mindset. And that is, like I alluded to earlier, they're not going to suffer any less than the person who's victimized, but they're going to wallow in their suffering. They're going to do things that are empowered. They're going to get up every day. They're going to, treat themselves kindly. They're going to have supreme self-care. They're going to, embody their grief, but let a lot of that go as look at, like, how do I do this in a healthy way? And, I talk a lot about that throughout the, I sort of loosely, I wouldn't say that my book is a direct depiction of the hero's journey, but I loosely imprint the hero's journey into the story of this book, into the chapters. And the beautiful thing is that I want each person who reads it to frame their own journey through the hero's lens. And so I really lead you through a soul mantra. It's a guided meditation, to a soul inquiry, a list of questions, to a transformational writing process that allows you to write your story from the hero's lens. And I found that years ago, I don't know if you remember this, Amy, but I held Heartbroken Open circles.
I remember. Mm-hmm.
And years ago, I would have, 20 to 50 women show up in my home monthly. And around the circle, I found, as each woman told their story, I found that they would get stronger and stronger and stronger. And what I always encouraged in those circles was, you're not the victim. You can't be the victim. You've got to just really own that this happened, but own it in a way, keep your relationship with your loved one alive, deal with your anger and forgiveness if you're going through a divorce, all of these different things to help women know that their story was really valuable to them and part of their medicine, but telling it from an empowered place versus a victim place was really imperative.
I love that. So I just want to encourage everyone listening, when you think of those stories that you tell over and over and over again, because we all have them. We all have those stories that have made the part of our lives, whether it was about loss or even triumphs, like whatever it is. Are you telling your stories from that place of empowerment, or are you telling that story from a place of victimization where then it's pulling you back down? And I feel like we see this all the time on the news. We see this when, just even like with the Parkland shootings, when you look at like Emma Gonzalez, who was telling her story and crying, but doing it from such a place of power of, we will make a difference. This will make a difference in the world. Like, what an incredible example of tragedy immediately going into that hero story.
Absolutely.
For herself. So it's like, for all of you listening, what are the stories and how can you start shifting them into that place of telling it from the space of being the hero, of telling it as, this is how, having pride in who you've become because of that story. I love that. Like, whenever I hear people, whether it's from a stage, like it's a motivational speech from the stage or it's on the news or whatever, you can always tell the difference between people who are in their power when they tell their story, of a horrific childhood, but they're doing it from that place of empowerment. What a great example Oprah is when she talks about her own abuse. It's from such a space of power of, this made me who I am today.
Yeah.
And so shifting that, so powerful.
So powerful. And really, just for everyone, just so powerful for your own healing, because at the end of the day, you're the one that matters to you, really. What the stories you tell yourself is how you lift yourself up or down. And,
yeah.
And those are the ones that matter. So at the end of the day, it's what we say to ourselves that matter most. And, certainly also, I really give, I talk a lot about how important it is to share your story from that place of power too.
Mm-hmm.
And that even if it's just shared with one person from a place of power, it changes and shifts the entire world, that because you empower somebody else to see their own story from a different lens too. And so that's why I feel so strongly about, about the hero's journey and about people being able to shift their mindset and focus to being that for themselves. It's just the
Love that.
greatest feeling.
I love that so much. Really want to encourage everyone, like, the stories that you're telling yourself in your mind, how can you flip that switch over to that place of power? The stories that you're telling, at a barbecue this summer or whatever it is, right? It's like really from that place of power. I'm curious for you, Kris, because I'm thinking about over the years as I've known you and the way for you when you, and especially knowing now with this new book. And again, everyone check out From Heartbreak to Wholeness.com. That will be in the show notes. Really want to encourage you to, I always say, grab 3 copies of a book when it comes out, because first, I just want people to know we pour our hearts and souls into our books. And I can't even tell you how much work they are to write. I'm like, you're doing this again, Kris? Like, what is happening, right? It's crazy process.
I was like a baby. Forget the whole time.
I know, right? Yeah, you totally forgot the childbirth story. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, but it's also, it's such an incredible, process as an author to go through that process. And here's the thing, this is our best stuff. We've distilled down things that, like you said, you had all of those years of having women in your living room over and over again and learning from that, and then learning from your own, when you're standing up at the American Red Cross Association or American Heart Association, when you're giving those speeches, like you're seeing what's resonating, what's not. And it's like, and then we distill it all down into this incredible book that is the best of the best. So if you're experiencing any heartbreak in your life, or someone who is, go and get some copies of this book. And I always say, a copy for yourself, a copy for someone you love that and then keep a copy on your bookshelf. And then there'll be someone that, shows up at a party that you're throwing and you're like, I have the perfect book for you. And then you can gift it to them. And this is also a way to support people like Kris, like me, the authors in the world that are doing this work for you and putting it all into this package that costs usually, under $25. It's like, it's the best deal in town. Like, and then actually do the work in the book. That's what I want to say about it. I just think it's so important. My goodness.
That's true. That's a great way to talk about it, Amy. Thank you so much. And these books, these kinds of books are labors of love for sure.
They are.
They are. And you do, it's kind of the whole thing that you can't, like, I couldn't even move into another topic until I wrote this book,
I so understand that. Yeah. I mean, they really are. When you're pregnant with an idea for a book, you have to get it out into the world, which I so get. I'm curious for you, as over the years, as you've, publicly talked, whether on Oprah or any of the other, Today Show or whatever, all these television shows that you've been on, and you tell the story of Richard, of your late husband's passing. How is that experience for you these days?
Well, and that's an interesting question, because the reason why it doesn't impact me quite as emotionally, or people worry about me, because again, I'm telling it from a very empowered place. I'm telling it from the hero's lens, and I share my story because it wakes people up to their lives. I share my story because the greatest message in my own mess was that I wasn't feeling my life, and I want everyone to not have to go through the suffering that I did at realizing that, and and feeling so even shame about it, because I had no idea that I was living the way I was living until I wasn't anymore. And so that was so much a part of my own message in the mess, and my desire to make life better for people, and so part of the reason why I'm able to share my story is it is a story that's shocking, and it is a story that everyone can relate to. And it's a story that nobody wants to imagine.
Right.
Nobody wants to imagine, but if you imagine it, then you're going to make a change happen in your lives. And then if you imagine that a person in your life that you love can walk out the door and die suddenly, if I had only imagined that the day before Richard died, I would have gotten that last hug.
Oh.
I would have run out to the car and said, I'm here. I want to hug you. I want to hold you tight, because how would I have known that the next day he was going to be gone?
Right.
and that's again, that comes from having walked the hero's path and saying, I'm willing to go there again and again and again to give back to humanity. And that is in essence the holy grail of the hero's journey, is that you take your story and you give it back to humanity. You give it back. It belongs to humanity. It's a story we can all relate to, and it's life-changing.
I love that. I love that you have so deeply connected into your purpose of sharing the story over and over again, and knowing that you're on book tour and going to be telling it a lot, that you have just so deeply landed in that space of service, of having your story be of service to other people and wake other people up. That is so incredibly powerful.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, that's beautiful, honey. So I know that we're wrapping up here, and I'll ask you the question that I like to ask all of my guests here on the Amy Ahlers Show, which is, what's magical and what's messy about your life right now?
Oh, that's easy.
New book, and new book.
Well, what's magical about my life right now is I am going to have my 5th grandbaby this fall.
Oh my gosh.
My daughter Jazz is having her 5th child.
Wait, I did not even know that she was pregnant with her 5th child.
Yeah, poor Jazz. All of her children have come broken through birth controls one way or another. So this husband went out of vasectomy, and then she got pregnant right after. So,
oh my gosh,
we're gonna say this little guy snuck in before the tubes got tied.
Oh my gosh. That is crazy. Wait, so what's the age range? We need to know this, because I know there's a lot of mamas who listen to this show.
Well, just so you all are listening, my daughter she just turned 29 years old.
I mean,
and she's having her 5th baby before she's 30, and her oldest is turning 9 this summer, and they stair-step down 2 years, except these last 2 are only going to be 9 months apart, or 15 months apart. No, 15 months apart.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. She was 9 months pregnant. 18 months, because she was 9 months. The baby was 9 months, and then so 18 months apart these 2 will be. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's the story. She's gonna have a big family and a basketball team to boot. So
oh my goodness.
And then the messy part probably, and the joy is, the book. Like, I'm super overjoyed that I have birthed this book, and the birthing process of bringing a book out and getting it out there it's messy.
It is.
It wakes you up in the middle of the night, and you've got 10 million things that you have to get done, and your team is frazzled, and and everybody's trying to get everything done on time for the book to be born. And so, but the good news is, book's gonna come out. Whether all of it gets on, it's gonna sell what it sells. It's just gonna be what it is, and that's it. I mean, the last thing I would love to say about the book is that while it may get pigeonholed as a lost book, it really isn't. It's a book that has a roadmap on how to live, and
beautiful,
how to live with a tremendous amount of clarity and joy. And that's for somebody who isn't necessarily in heartbreak or loss. It'll really teach you a lot about how to return to joy if you ever find yourself in that position. So thanks, Amy.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Again, everyone, the name of the book is From Heartbreak to Wholeness. You can check it out at fromheartbreaktoWholeness.com. My guest, the incredible, the amazing ray of sunshine, Kristine Carlson. Thank you, darling, for being here on the Amy Ahlers Show. And with that, I'll remind all of you, if you've loved the Amy Ahlers Show, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It does help other ambitious, powerful, soulful women find this very show so that they can stop being so darn hard on themselves. And with that, until next time, it's Amy Ahlers, the Wake Up Call Coach, signing off. Bye-bye, everyone.